We'll move on to Port Adelaide. Kane Cornes' 300th game went pretty sourly on the weekend. He had this to say, Kane Cornes, after the game.
A little bit disappointed to leave the boys like this, in a bit of a hole at the moment, but feel bad for leaving now, but just thanks to everyone that's come out today and supported me over 15 years. It's been a great journey.
Well done to Kane Cornes. He went out as the best player on the weekend. He kept Trent Cotchin to 17 possessions, but it just highlights the conundrum for mine. They now have to take a player out who was their best player on the weekend, who quelled the opposition's best player to 17 possessions, and now they've got to make a compulsory change. It's a strange circumstance. I'm still left to wonder how much of an impact this has had over the past couple of weeks, but I can guarantee you that from this point on it'll be nothing about other than focusing on what happens on the weekend, and I can't help but think they've been a bit distracted.
Yeah, interviewed the coach, Ken Hinkley, tonight on 3AW, and I asked him the question. I said, you would have heard my comments that I thought once you commit to a season, you follow on, and Ken Hinkley said, no, I think it's been the perfect ending. So I just wonder, had they said, no, Kane, we're desperate for you to keep playing, would he have done it? But I think the vibes he got, as you've touched on last week, Cara, that they're more than happy for Kane to move on.
I do sort of feel he can't do a thing right, Gary. I mean, if he'd played badly, people would have had a crack at him, and because he's played well, people have had a bit of a crack at the situation.
I don't have a crack at him. It's more of the value to his side that he's got. So I more think that they're a better side with him in it, that's all. We're not having a go at Kane.
No, and to quote Kane, he's left them in a hole, in his own words.
Yeah, but that's not his doing. They're in a bit of a hole, but I think him leaving is not going to make the hole...
Well, it is his doing because he's made the decision.
Yeah, but I mean, he hasn't created the hole. He hasn't left them in a hole of his own creation.
But he's left them.
Yeah, he certainly left them.
What's wrong with them? What is wrong with Port Adelaide? 13th on the ladder, most pundits had them contesting and competing in the top four. I mean, what's gone wrong?
Well, I've picked 4 key areas and I'll just go through them quickly. I think their depth isn't as good as we thought it was. So Wingard and Gray, they lost Pollock and Ollie Wine. So Wingard and Gray have had to go into the midfield. Their second tier isn't as good as we're touched on. I'll show some vision of guys who have struggled. Lobie and Ryder both want to be number one ruckman.
It's interesting that one, isn't it?
Yeah, and they can't be. And Lobie suffered badly because of it, and Ryder's really not a natural forward. And scores from turnover. Last year, they scored 2 extra goals in their opposition from turnovers. This year, they're conceding 2, Gary. So it's a 4-goal turnaround for them in that area.
Wingard and Gray inside forward 50 are an absolute nightmare for every opposition club. By circumstance and injury, they've spent less time there.
Gray's dropped 20% this year, so he's gone from 53% inside forward 50 to 30, and Wingard's dropped 10%. So this is a final. They turn the final on its head. 4 second-half goals, playing inside 50. Both of them aren't scoring goals this year. Jay Schultz has a few down weeks. No one else can score, so that was a big factor. And just their middle tier of players, Gary, that have dropped off. What's happened to this run? Pollock's had his injuries but was struggling before we went off. Even watching this vision, I think, where's it been this year?
Yeah.
Pollock's won. Justin Westhoff, he's just a bit of a myth at times. 1 week he's there, the next he's gone. And Matty White. So their second-tier players, could name about another 4 of them. Jake Need, Broadbent, many of them have dropped off. I think they'll struggle to make the 8 now.
And just quickly on Ryder and Lobie, I mean, Ryder was the big signing in the off-season as the final piece in the puzzle that was going to take them to the promised land. Yet he was a man that, by his own admission, wants to play in the ruck, needs to play in the ruck, and you've got Matthew Lobie sitting there who's had a terrific year playing in the ruck. That hasn't quite worked.
No, it hasn't. And we thought Ryder would be the cream on the cake, but unfortunately, with other players falling away, it hasn't been the case.
Lobie had back issues, so they needed to have 2 ruckmen, didn't they?
Yeah.
They couldn't have one just strong ruckman, but you're saying that Paddy doesn't want to play up forward.
No, he's not as natural there, no. They both are the best, like being the number 1 ruck.